Welcome back to the final video of my Damia tech deck. In this video today we're going to be going over a bit of the miscellaneous cards and a couple of cards that I had taken out. And I'll explain as to why I took them out. Anyhow, moving on. Here we have, actually, these aren't really miscellaneous. These are just kind of game accelerator cards. Skull Clamp, definitely a game accelerator because when a equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards off of it. You know, with Bitter Blossom, just equip it to those fairies, and, you know, for 1 life, you get 2 cards. Not bad. You know, it's better than Erebos. Burgeoning. Whenever an opponent plays a land, you may choose a card from your hand and put it on battlefield. I've found that, you know, if you can get it off on turn 1, and, you know, it just so happens that you have a bunch of lands in your hand, you can usually get Damia out on the field pretty quickly. Exploration. Very great card. You can play an additional land each turn. For 1 mana, that's just sweet. I'm really bummed out that they reprinted this card in Conspiracy, but hey, I have no control over that. I traded for it at a very high value, but it's still, fortunately, at a high value. Coiling Oracle. Great card. Definitely an accelerator when you cast it, because it either gives you a land or it allows you to draw a card. Baleful Strix, another one of those accelerator cards. It's also kind of a big deal at the start of the game because of that flying and death touch. People don't want to mess with you within the first 3 turns that you play this card at the start of the game. You know, turn 5 or something, it's kind of a little so what, I don't care about it, but hey, for when you get it out early, it's really sweet. Shardless Agent, why? Because, you know, it gives me a creature, and it also hits something, it hits my 2 or 1 drops. And the 2 and 1 drops in this deck are very great and very helpful. You know, you're gonna help me kind of pull out my sweet combos in this deck. Edric, Spymaster of Trust. I love this guy. I will usually tutor for him early in the game, mainly because in multiplayer, he allows me to be less of a target. And even 1v1, he's still a great card because whenever a creature you control deals damage to your opponent, you draw a card. Obnixilis and Avenger of Zendikar, the two big fat landfall creatures. As I've mentioned earlier in an earlier video, with Avenger of Zendikar, I have won games with Scapeshift because I'll play something like 10 plants on the battlefield that are 0/1s, but then I Scapeshift and all of a sudden those 10 plants become like 11 12s or 12 13s, and, you know, make them unblockable, and it's GG for someone. Or 2 people. Obnixilis the Fallen. I actually have one with this guy, where I just escape shift and I ping somebody for 45 life. It's pretty nasty. It's pretty gross. Bitter Blossom. A lot of people don't see why I run it, but I found that in early game, mid game, and late game, it's useful. Early game, it's the best in early game because, you know, you run 40 life and, you know, you get to put fairies on the battlefield. It gives you that creature advantage early game. Late game, you know, not so much, but, you know, it's still not bad. Garruk Primal Hunter. I never use its +1 or its -6. I will always use its -3, you know, so it's like 5 mana to draw cards. It's for the greatest power that you control. It's basically, God, I don't know, that green soul card with, like, a Johnny on it. It's like 5 mana, it's the same cost, but hey, I mean, sometimes I'll use its +1 in rare cases, in case I need a blocker or something. Consecrated Sphinx. Obviously one of those staple cards in every blue deck because it does give you a massive card advantage over your opponents. When they draw a card, you can choose to draw 2 cards. You know, odds are I will keep drawing those 2 cards no matter what. And people will tend to get rid of it with something along the lines of Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshare. You know, which then in that case it's kind of like, well, crap. Sun Quan, Lord of Wu. Definitely has won me a lot of games with Avenger of Zendikar plants. I really love attacking people with a bunch of 0/1 plants that somehow end up becoming like 12 13s. Really sweet, and when they're unblockable with this guy, he's just a living nightmare for your opponents. Moving on to the last two spells I have here. They're both X costing spells. As mentioned in the land video, in late game, I do tend to have a ridiculous amount of mana, so sometimes the X in this will be something along the lines of 30 or even 50. And the X in this will always tend to be 30 too, because I don't want to reveal my whole deck, because, you know, then somebody could just mill me and then force a draw with a temple bell or something of the sort. So I usually just will search for I will usually just reveal half of the remainder of my deck with Genesis Wave. And moving on to these last three cards, the reason why they were backwards was because these three cards I am taking out of the deck. Rhystic Study, I am replacing that with Chord of Calling. Stifle, I'm replacing that with Void Slime, because Void Slime is so much better, because it's a counterspell. Oh yeah, Chord of Calling is so much better than Rhystic Study. Search a creature. Draw a card. But I've found that in every game I've played, whenever I play this card, people will pay that additional mana, because they don't want you to get any card advantage. Greater Good will be replaced with Vampiric Tutor. Why? Because Vampiric Tutor is a sweet tutor card at instant speed for 1. I think you pay 2 life, but hey, it's not bad. Puts it on top of the library, which is still not bad. Because odds are you're not going to have opponents who are going to be forcing you to shuffle your decks, or Fate Seal you. But Greater Good was a great card in the old Damia deck I had. These cards were all great in the old Damia deck I used to run, but they've kind of become obsolete because I don't run the ridiculous combos anymore that I used to run. Anyhow, that concludes the entirety of my deck tech of my Damia EDH deck. Hope you guys have enjoyed the playlist. Subscribe, or whatever.